I saw a tweet that said, homeschooling would be a lot easier if the kid in my class wasn't such a bully. If you're like most parents, you were probably completely unprepared to be supervising your kid's schooling. And you feel like, one, you're the worst at it, and two, if you don't micromanage everything, nothing is going to get done. So if you have teenagers in your home, you and your teens are probably driving each other a little bit insane about now. Welcome to LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning and attention challenges, including dyslexia and learning disabilities. We are live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder and executive director of Stowell Learning Centers, where we help children and adults permanently change their learning and attention challenges, including dyslexia. Today, I will be talking with Dr. Catherine Barrett about ways to build collaboration between parents and kids and reduce stress, improve relationships, and help your teens develop self-direction with their schoolwork. You know, this is a really challenging time right now. Wouldn't it be great if the silver lining at the end of this is that you come out of it with better relationships with your teens and teenagers and kids who can be more independent, more self-directed in their schoolwork? That would be really great. Before I introduce you to Dr. Barrett, I want to bring Lauren in here to tell you how you can participate in our conversation today, because I think you're really going to want to. Hi, Lauren.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren, the director of the Irvine Center here in Orange County, California, and I'll be taking your comments and questions. So leave those if you're on Facebook and watching us on Facebook Live. Leave your questions or comments in the comment section right below the video. If you're on YouTube, it's on the side. Say hello. I see some people in here already. Candace already says hello from Facebook. So hi, Candace. Thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about today's topic, not only because Sharon, our director at our Thousand Oaks Center, raves about Dr. Barrett. She loves her. So I'm excited for that and to finally meet her, but also because this is what our families are experiencing right now with teens. Our teens want to be independent, but don't exactly know how. And our parents are kind of struggling with how much to let go and how much to help. So it's really relevant for today. So I really appreciate that. So hi, everyone. Join the conversation. I'll be stopping periodically to check the comments and moderating. So excited to have everyone here.
Thanks, Lauren. If you're just joining us, this is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell, author and founder of Stowell Learning Centers. Our guest today is Dr. Catherine Barrett. I am so excited for you to meet her. And we have so many things to talk about, including ways that you can collaborate with your kids to find a balance between managing your teenagers' schoolwork and letting them take charge. Dr. Barrett is a clinical forensic psychologist with an additional degree in marriage and family therapy. Her practice is in Calabasas, California, where she treats a variety of clinical cases and serves as an expert witness and forensic evaluator. One of Dr. Barrett's specialties is working with teenagers and helping them navigate through that unique and challenging stage of development. Welcome, Dr. Barrett.
Good morning. Good to see you.
I am so excited to have you on the program today.
I know we're all going a little crazy in this quarantine right now.
I know it. You know, not only is teenage a unique time in development, but in this time of quarantine, it is just truly a unique time in history. And, you know, I know teenagers are like the king and queen of devices. You know, they love their devices, but with all of their schooling having been moved online, that has to be affecting them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're seeing one of the most difficult pieces of this. First of all, just to give a little bit of um, information about this time in a kid's life. When we're looking at developmentally, we're looking at this is a time where a kid is developing his or her own sense of identity, but also caught with needing mom and dad at the same time. So it's like getting pulled in two directions, wanting independence, wanting dependence. And now we're in this unprecedented time where it's even more confusing because I'm seeing, and I can talk about this later if it comes up, what I'm seeing with the schools and the inconsistencies and how these kids are being asked to self-start and do things on their own, which in some ways is a little bit unrealistic. And then when that's not happening, mom and dad feeling like they really need to step in and take over, which I understand and appreciate that anxiety, and how that this is creating this perfect storm in the house because nobody was prepared for this.
Right.
So we have so much going on at once, and hopefully today we can break this down a little bit to help parents work through some of these difficulties and these anxieties within themselves and with their kids.
You know, I do. You talk about that anxiety that parents have, and I feel like, you know, they're scared right now, especially if they have teens. It's like,
yes,
high school counts, and now they're kind of in charge of education. What if I do it wrong?
Yes, and I think that is a normal and understandable fear because especially kids who are going into junior year, where this is the year where the grades really matter. And I know some of the colleges are even removing the SATs and the ACTs because, or the scores, because how do we prep kids at this time? So there's a lot of unpredictability at this time. And I think that's where collectively, I want parents to understand that you are not in this alone. Colleges, I'm a college professor as well. You know, I teach graduate school at USC. And so even with graduate students, I've seen the panic of what this is all causing. What I will say, and this may not be what everybody wants to hear, is there is going to be a latency period here of learning. And what I mean by that is everyone, wherever they are in schooling, might regress a little bit before we progress again. That has a lot to do with the adjustment that we're going through. We're trying to figure out how do we effectively teach these kids online, get them to feel motivated to do their work,
right?
Get it to a place where parents can trust that the schools are doing this, and then also working with the schools individually to see how they are working with these kids throughout the day, because there's a lot of inconsistencies and concerns I have about how we've rolled into this, and it's not very regulated yet, and there are some concerns I have about that.
Well, with all of that going on, you know, nobody knows exactly how things are supposed to go. How can parents feel comfortable kind of taking a step back, or how do they guide without smothering their team?
This is such an important question, such a great question. I think we cannot forget the importance of the relationship and the emotional connection that parents will have with their kids through this. And I know that it's more pressured now because everybody's under the same roof, and that comes with different stressors and different anxieties, depending on the family, depending on the amount of space people have in the home. But one thing I want to emphasize is, if you are only talking to your kids about school and your anxiety is coming off as that is the most important thing, that's going to facilitate a lot of anxiety in them, and oftentimes create less motivation in them to self-start. So the first thing I would say is we cannot forget the importance of connecting with them on an emotional level, empathizing and validating how difficult this transition is. Putting that aside, we have to remember, if we're talking about teenagers, again, we're talking about this really specific time in their life where they need a balance between independence and dependence. So one of the things I want to talk about today is, how do you work collaboratively with your kid so you are not feeling like the parent that needs to helicopter or do everything for them. How do you help them self-start? So we want to set them up for success, because this is the time in their life that they will develop a healthy identity if they start to feel like they can do things on their own and are positively reinforced for that. So what I mean by that is there are three things that I think are important to take away and remember, which is connecting, helping them de-escalate, and then helping them refocus. And so what I mean by that is it's really easy to get baited in to their chaos, baited into arguments of not wanting to do their work and allowing your anxiety to sort of take over, which just makes everything heightened. And now we are in the state of panic. So remembering that everyone right now is in this state of anxiety. So we want to help the parent and the child connect, have a conversation. How are you feeling? What's going on? What are you experiencing? How can I help you? How can we do this together? Some of the things that I have suggested to parents and to teens that I'm working with is if teens are having a hard time connecting with their teachers, which this is a big thing that's coming up right now. Teachers are going MIA for 3 days. An email will be returned in 3 days. Making sure that the parent is CC'd on that email, but still allowing the student to write the email to the teacher. Maybe you're helping your child put that email together, but you are helping them create a sense of autonomy and motivation to do this on their own. When the teacher writes back, when they start getting their grades back, they are then going to feel responsible and successful because they're taking ownership in their work. And I think at this age, if the parent's anxiety takes over and they start to step in and do everything, the kid's going to check out. He or she's going to be very frustrated, and that's where a lot of the arguing and the lack of productivity is going to happen. I want to also add to that piece that it's important to talk about things other than school. And this goes back to how we connect with kids. So I've had some families who cook together. I've had some families who do theme nights for dinner. And I understand this is not going to be realistic for all families. I'm just throwing out some creative ideas. Some families will do a question of the day, and then each person asks a question and it's answered at dinner. Some people are doing creative art projects together, going for walks together, getting your body moving. If you have a child that suffers from ADHD, thinking about the importance of structure, thinking about the importance of exercise, getting them off the television set, getting them outside as much as we can in the climate that we're in right now. Kids with ADHD, they need to be stimulated. If they aren't stimulated, they are going to fall into that oppositional place where they are baiting you into arguments and you are feeling exhausted. The ADHD brain operates needing a lot of stimulation. And when kids aren't getting that, that's oftentimes where you'll see that overlap of oppositional defiance, we might call it, where they just create arguments and they bait you into that. And if you're unaware of that, you get baited into that. And then again, we're not being productive. So there's so many things that you can do as a family to connect with the child, to get them to feel like you're talking to them more about more things than just school. Okay, so I would say that's really important. As a parent, I don't know how many of you out there are seeing this. One of the concerns that I've had that has come up has been the inconsistency with how high school is being taught. And what I mean by that is that a lot of these teachers are not lecturing. They're putting up work at all times of the week where the kids don't know, is this due on Tuesday? Is it due on Thursday? I'm supposed to have this class this day, but another teacher scheduled a quiz at this time. So I've even worked with clients on putting together a whiteboard, putting up the classes that they have each day. As work comes in, you put it up on that whiteboard. And then once the work is done, you show it to mom and dad, and then you get to go ahead and cross that out and move on to the next thing. So helping them organize their week when the schools are still trying to figure out how to get everything organized. So collaboration. And then giving them a little bit of time to make mistakes. Like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we are going to regress a little bit before we progress. This is collective in the sense that we are all learning how to adjust to this new way of learning. So I would say 90% of students right now are not doing their best work. And it's not because they don't care. It's not necessarily because they've given up on school. It's not because they're oppositional. It's because we are in a huge period of adjustment. So we have to allow a little bit of space for that. Make sure that you're communicating with the teachers if there are any concerns. You know, my child reached out to you 3 days ago. He or she still hasn't received an email back. That might be where you get involved, but still allowing your child to reach out first. So it's going to be a joint effort, but with the idea that you are helping your child create those skills and doing it on his own or her own. And then if necessary, if the teacher is not responding, then step in and you know, help your kid out. So Jill, how does that sound?
You know, there were so many great points there. You know, so many of our parents come to us with concerns about their child's executive function. And what they don't realize is that, you know, we as parents, we want to make sure our kids are okay. We don't want them in pain and we don't want them to suffer. And so, you know, we helicopter over them and we micromanage, and this collaboration of problem solving together actually allows them to build executive function. I've thought, you know, this period of time more than any other is a huge opportunity to build that executive function, because we're not running everywhere and trying to manage, you know, all the different kids' activities and everything. And, you know, exactly what you were talking about with, you know, let's get together and yeah, this is a problem. We don't really understand exactly what, you know, when assignments are due or what the teacher's asking. Okay, let's sit down and problem solve that together. What are all the solutions we can think of? And I love the idea of a big whiteboard where we can put things down and then cross it off, because it puts it in everybody's consciousness. We've done it together. So students are getting the opportunity to participate in organization and planning, and then they get to cross it off, which is fabulous because
it's so satisfying to cross it off. Yeah.
That's right. You feel like, okay, I did something here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something about just that physical sensation. I actually still keep an actual planner instead of putting everything in my phone. There's something about writing it out and crossing it off that feels really rewarding and really productive. And it's also a covert way of the parents still being able to monitor whether it's getting done or not. So all parties feel rewarded, all parties feel less anxiety, because it's still up to the child to write it up there, do the work, show mom and or dad, and then cross it off once they've been given the okay. Everyone then is on the same page. What it also allows is for the parents to step back, and whether they're working from home or doing other things or attending to other kids in the house or other responsibilities, it allows them to know, okay, I know what's going on without having to be in their face 24/7. So, and another thing to bring to this is allowing a little bit of room for trial and error. Okay, so that didn't work. What did work? Let's keep that. What didn't work? Okay, why didn't it work? Let's redo that together. So there's going to be a little bit of trial and error too.
And I think that is huge. And just educating our kids that when something doesn't work, that's an opportunity to figure out, okay, what do I need to change? What parts worked? What didn't? That is exactly what our executive function does.
That's the problem solving.
Allowing
That's right.
them to participate in that process. Yeah,
absolutely. This problem, and to be honest with you, I think this could actually, when we do go back to physical school, if they learn these skills now, how much that will actually push them ahead when mom and dad aren't there when they go back to school. This is the time. We don't want people developing executive functioning skills at 30 and 40. This is the time where they have the luxury to make some of these mistakes or errors or trial and error. So by the time they get to college or they get into their professional life, this is the time to not do it perfectly. Not that we're ever going to do it perfectly, but this is the time to really be given that space to go, okay, it's okay to let him or her make the mistake. And like you said, then be able to go back and go, okay, let's talk about why that maybe didn't work. So developing that skill is huge. That will help them feel more confident. That will help them want to self-start, and that will give them more motivation then and reinforcement to continue doing that work. But it is definitely going to be a collaborative effort.
Yeah. And we talked about parents feeling like they are, they don't know if they're doing it right and they're kind of beating themselves up. Well, this is a great time for parents to just be a little bit vulnerable in front of their kids and say, I'm not sure how to do this either. Let's problem solve it together. So, I think it could be a really positive journey for families.
Absolutely. And I think what you're touching on is the modeling, right? This is a time for parents to also say, I don't have all the answers. I say that to my clients a lot. I work with a lot of adults too. I don't have all the answers right now. Let's do this together. Let's explore this together. That models that vulnerability, that models the, you don't have to be perfect, that we're struggling through this together, that most problems can be fixed. And that if that will ease the child's anxiety. And if the child's anxiety is eased, then the parent's anxiety is eased, and then everybody benefits from that. So parents getting their own self-care is also a big part of this too. Practice what we're preaching. If we are saying to our kids, I don't want you on your phone all day, I don't want you watching Netflix all day, I don't want you overly stimulated, I think it's really important for the parents to try that as well and model, especially during a quarantine where your kids are going to be picking up on most everything that you're doing. I think modeling right now is another really important tool. And so I know families who will have parts of their day where they're like, okay, we're all unplugged. Phones are away, TV's off, we're playing games, or even if we're all in our own rooms and doing something creative, we are off screens, we are unplugged. But the parents do it as well. So it doesn't feel like a punishment. It feels collaborative. It feels like self-care. And again, for these kids who are on screens all day now, it's like, be careful what you wish for, because now they're on screens all day.
Right.
They need a break. We become overstimulated. We can't, it falls into problems sleeping because our brains need time to calm down before we go to bed. So we need to also unplug a little bit because there is so much more screen time now.
One of the things just continually that's come into my mind as you're talking is how important it is to just educate our kids. I mean, screen time really overstimulates the brain. And so talking about that together and saying, and you talked about how kids with ADHD especially, but all of us, need to move. So let's talk about that together as a family and make decisions for all of us to have healthier brains, better memory, better attention. And, I love that the whole family unplugs at a certain time, or the whole family says, you know what, it's time for a bike ride. We saw a family last night that was bike riding through the neighborhood, and they had all decorated their bikes with lights around the tires. It looked like a very cool family project.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Jill, and making it fun. Yeah.
Right.
Hi, Dr. Barrett. I haven't gotten to meet you yet, but Sharon raves about you. So So glad that you're here. We have someone else that agrees. Stephanie is commenting, like, it's just so empowering. I think that that's the one of the biggest messages of this, is that we're empowering our kids by working together, by admitting that we're not perfect as parents, definitely. Having the child come up with their own solutions, having them analyze their own solutions. That's what executive functioning training looks like. That's how we do it at our center. And then certainly parents doing that with their kids at home. So it is an empowering time. I do know that it's hard to get started. This might be a different dynamic, a different process. The thing about parents, that parenting is first and foremost, I would say, an emotional process. And so that's the hard part, is that, I always said I was the perfect parent until I became one. I love that. Then it just all went downhill. And so how do you, as a parent, I mean, there's that emotional part of this person that you raised since they were, teeny tiny, and now they're a teenager, and you're trying to do what's best for them, but there is that emotional component. How do you get past that?
I think that's a great question. And I'm also going to preface that by saying that every family dynamic is different. And there are some people right now who are going to have a lot more difficulty doing this than other families. I saw a quote come out the other day that said, "We're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat." And so this is an individual process, although there's overarching themes here of what we should be doing. Also always careful to use that word because it can feel very shaming, but what we can be doing to help our kids. But with some families, it might be more challenging. We might have single parent households. We might have other stressors going on, financial stressors and things like that. I think the first thing we have to do, whether we're, as parents, as human beings, as adults, as anyone overseeing kids right now, is to first just have some patience and self-love for ourselves, and remembering that we don't have to be, going back to what Jill and I were saying at the beginning, is being patient with this process with ourselves. If your kid is struggling, it is not a direct, it's not a direct reflection of you as a parent or as a human being, and remembering that you are learning how to do this as we're going to. And the schools are making it really difficult for parents right now because they aren't incredibly organized, because they haven't figured out. With colleges, it's a little bit different. We're used to doing online stuff all the time, but with high schools, it's new. So I would say, checking in with yourself, making sure that you are finding time for that self-care, making sure that you are not blaming yourself or shaming yourself for your kids not getting this right away. Some kids are going to adapt easier than others. So if you hear your neighbor's kid doing everything perfectly, again, it's not necessarily a direct reflection of you as a parent. Every parent, every child is going to have different difficulties and different advantages. And that's why, again, it goes back to that connection. If something isn't working, like in any conflict, you go back to the drawing board, you sit them down and go, "All right, kid, let's talk about this. I love you. This is hard on all of us. How can I help you? What are you feeling?" Connecting with them emotionally is going to make you feel better, closer to them, and it's going to allow them to, I think, feel more comfortable opening up to you.
Absolutely. Hey, if you're just joining us, I'm Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers, and my guest today is Dr. Catherine Barrett. We are talking about how online schooling has affected our teens and ways that parents and their teens can navigate teenage, homeschool, and that natural desire and need of teens to be independent. Dr. Barrett, you brought your associate with you today. Let's introduce her.
Yeah, so she will be my associate in about a month. I've actually been, she's been in my cohort. I teach the marriage and family therapy program at Rossier School of Education at USC. So I want to introduce Aurora Kaye, who will be graduating in the next week. And she's incredible and also works with a lot of kids and teens and may have some good insight for us as well. So Aurora, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Aurora. It's so nice to have you on with us today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Aurora, do you want to just tell them a little bit about like what you're doing at your site and what you've seen? And I know you've had some of these cases as well.
Yeah. So I'm working at the Southern California Counseling Center. It's a community center. The main location is in Mid-City, and then we have a satellite location in Watts. So my client load is kind of split between those two places, mostly working with under-resourced communities. Certainly have teenagers that are going through this and that have been recently diagnosed with ADHD, some younger kids that, aren't technically diagnosed yet, but are going through a lot of these struggles. And then older adults as well. So my kind of lens is social justice based, so looking at the community, looking at relationships, and how do these kind of impact how kids, clients are showing up in the world. And so I think something important to me is kind of raising awareness and feeling a sense of presence. I really like this kind of spirit so far of self-starting, and having clients feel like they can self-soothe and kind of build their own resiliency to move through the world.
Fantastic. Let's check in with Lauren one more time, see if there are any other questions.
We do. So Sarah on Facebook, and we hear this a lot with our students, definitely, and probably more so now. I think everybody's having a hard time with motivation. It doesn't matter if you have learning challenges, ADHD, anything. I mean, just everybody, when we're all at home. She says her son is a junior and he's lost all motivation and doesn't care about anything I say about keeping up and turning in schoolwork. I think that for our local school district, some of them made the decision to that grades don't count. It's credit or no credit. So maybe that's kind of contributed to some of this motivation. The fact that our teenagers tend to be social creatures and need that kind of outside feedback from their peers, and they're not getting that. I mean, what would you have to say about that? Either one of you that are dealing with teens or
I would like you said, Lauren, I think this is really an overarching theme right now, and remembering that there's a lot of this situational depression. And when I say depression, I just mean, all of us are collectively experiencing a level of that. And what I mean by that is they are missing their peers. They are missing their everyday. So a lot of the motivation that is being lost is because they don't have that connection right now. And then adding to that, the way that the high schools are so disorganized, a lot of them right now. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully. I mean that we're still trying to figure out how to best organize this for the kids. That what I've experienced when I've talked to my clients, and maybe mom wants to check in with him, is, does he feel confused? Does he feel lost? Because a lot of what I'm getting from my clients, they don't know what they need to turn in. Sometimes quizzes are scheduled when another lecture, if there's even a lecture at all, is going on. So they start to feel like this sense of learned helplessness because they are being asked to self-start without the educators modeling their own presence of showing up and being there. And so for me, when I think of their age, it's out of sight, out of mind. If no one's showing up for them in that classroom setting, why are we not having lectures? Why is it that now, because we're home, they get a 5-minute check-in and then work over here? So if mom is suspecting that there's a lack of organization, this might be a good time for mom and son to collectively maybe write an email together to the teachers and go, hey, we need a little bit more clarification. But then also outside of the academic piece, finding ways for him to, and it's going to be different for every family, whether people feel comfortable having friends over in the yard with social distancing so they can at least say, hey, how do we implement some more, like we were saying before, moving your body, getting active, being creative, getting up, get out of your room. A lot of these teens are like, I don't want to get out of my room. I'm so comfortable being in this one space. And I get that, but they're crawling into these rabbit holes. So we have to find ways to get that dopamine moving again in their brain. Yeah, well, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that, or anything that you've seen that's helped with the motivation, or Jill, but.
Yeah, I know some clients have been doing like virtual dance parties with people, and
Yeah.
that feels like a way to get themselves moving and feels like they're together with people. Something cool has been there has been so many kind of free community gatherings online. So I know some kids have been doing that, like online virtual dance party exercise with friends.
Great idea.
It's really important to not, if your child is acting like they don't care, we need to not look at that and actually take that literally, because I think it's kind of more what you were saying, Dr. Barrett, that we're kind of all experiencing this group kind of depression and confusion. And even though we go through our days and we seem like we're fine, I mean, I know even for myself, periodically, I just get hit with this wall of, oh my gosh, look what's happening in the world. And as a teenager, you know, they want you to think they have it all together and they look all grown up, but they're really not. And there's just so much going on in their brain. And so I think really when we see that, it may look like they don't care anymore, but it might be time to flop down on the bed with them and just say, wow, this is a really tough time, isn't it? You know, I'm struggling at work to figure out how to do things. I bet you're struggling trying to understand what you're supposed to do at school, and just open up the opportunity for them to share and talk, and as opposed to making a judgment or sound, you know, I think we're making judgments all the time. So, you know, I think we need to be careful about how we interpret it. You know, when we see what looks like they don't care.
Right.
Yeah, I could not agree anymore. I think it's really easy and understandable for a parent to see that or experience that from their child, get anxious, and then get upset. And then it comes off like, why aren't you doing your work? Why are you unmotivated? How do I fix this for you? Whether you're using that verbiage or not, it kind of comes off like, I need you to do something to ease my anxiety, because I can't tolerate the fact that you're depressed, or I can't tolerate all of this. By the way, when I say this, is not a judgment towards the parents. This is the anxiety that's happening because no one wants to see their kid feel this way or act this way. So I think, like what you're saying, Jill, is be mindful of what comes up for you as a parent when you start to experience that. And this is where that de-escalation comes in. And like you said, go in and just have a really candid, transparent conversation. Like, I'm feeling it too, in a different way. Let's talk about this. How do we make it better for both of us? How do we make it better for all of us? And they might, you know, they're teen, they might go, get out of my room. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. You know, it might be that, but you've planted a seed. And if they say that, all right, I'm here if you need me. You know, you don't have to get upset or react to that. All right, but I'm here if you need me. And you're planting that seed to let them know you're right there with them emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved what Aurora was saying about some families, you know, or some groups having like dance parties and things. I mean, it might be that you might have to stimulate it a little bit with your teen, but to just say, you know what, let's plan something cool. Let's make a big sign and put it in the window and go around to your friends' homes and show it out the window, or something, you know, that will kind of get them excited socially, and let them know that, you know, as you were saying earlier, it's not all about school. It's about the relationship.
Right.
So
Kind of segues into our next comment. I'm sorry, it's blocking some of you, but I'll try to take it down. But Michelle is just asking, like, of course, you know, our kids learn from us and our responses. And so do you have strategies for parents that helps them to reflect on their own behavior and responses before then expecting it of your child? Because that is the hard part. Our parents are under a great deal of stress. Of course, our teens are, but our parents, I mean, I mean, our world turned upside down too. We're working from home. We are trying to parent. We now have our kids home 24/7. And so what advice do you have for parents for starting to just reflect and be aware, be mindful of their own kind of emotional responses?
Great question, because it's not easy to be a parent, and no parent signed on for this. So again, first, it's that being patient with yourself. If you're going to be patient with your child, you first have to learn to be patient with yourself. It's like the cliche of when you're on an airplane and putting the oxygen mask on yourself before your child so you can help them. It's the same sort of thing. And just like I would with anyone who's experiencing anxiety or anger management or anything, is just learn how to take that breath and pausing before you react, because it's really easy at this time. I've had parents go, I have to go into a bathroom and bite a towel just to not, and I'm like, hey, if that's what works, to just remember, like, learning those basic techniques of just taking a breath, taking a moment before an automatic reaction or something that comes out that they can't unhear, because once you've started that and facilitated that, then it can turn into something under the same roof that might take a while to repair. So just being patient with yourself, self-caring, recognizing that you don't have to be perfect in this. So finding a space for forgiveness in yourself. And then also the other thing that I wanted to say was, if you make a mistake and you do react that way, it's okay. You let that moment kind of ease out and calm down and cool off, and you go back and you go, hey, let's talk about what happened an hour ago. Let's revisit that. So I always think it's really important, if something gets escalated, you're not going to solve the problem during the escalation. Let it cool off, kind of go to your own corners, and then revisit it, an hour later or a couple hours later, and then have a conversation about it then.
That is huge, because when we're in a confrontation, now nobody's in their rational brain. So you're not going to fix that at that time. But some of us, I know myself, if there's something, I want it resolved right now, and so getting that mental picture of going to your own corner, take a little break, cool off, and then come back at a neutral time and just, recognize it, label it, talk about it. What can we do differently next time? What could I say differently next time? Whatever. That's great.
And to that question too, I would just recommend a book that's really kind of gets to the core of this. It's called Parenting from the Inside Out. It's by Dan Siegel. He's a really generous psychologist, both to teenagers and to parents, but it kind of encapsulates that entire experience and how to build some self-compassion, presence for ourselves, and how that translates to caregiving.
Great. Thank you for that reference.
We have Kayleen. She says, I love the reminder to pay attention about my feelings, not rushing in to solve the problem, so I don't feel anxiety about my kids' emotions. I mean, that's something I think that all parents do and we experience and we need to learn from, but we don't want our kids to be uncomfortable. And so that's that anxiety you're talking about, Dr. Barrett, like where I'm anxious because my kid's not happy and I want to fix it and I want to solve it. So so it definitely resonates with our parents. We have another question just regarding self-soothing strategies for teens. So what are some self-soothing strategies that our teenagers can use, especially those who do try really hard, but they get overwhelmed, and they're also a little bit of perfectionists. They get overwhelmed with the fear of disappointing their parents, disappointing themselves, disappointing teachers, things like that. So do you have strategies for that?
I think it's going to depend on the child and what actually works. So, for example, I'll use a client that I actually assessed. I did the psychoed evaluation, and every once in a while I'll check in with the parents, and they said to me, every time he has this really big tantrum. So I started to ask them, well, what do you suggest he does at that time? And they said, well, we usually have him, he gets really angry and he starts to throw things and he starts to break things. So now he knows to go, sit on his little beanbag chair and count to 10 and he's able to come out of it. And I said, okay, how does that work? And they said, the majority of the time it does. So we started talking about it more. And what I was trying to get out of the parents was, are you trying to get him to skip over the anger and go right into the soothing? Is there a message that the anger is not okay? And what we figured out together was his anger was a lot of his anxiety, and he needed an outlet for that. And the outlet wasn't necessarily sitting in a beanbag chair. He needed a punching bag. He needed something to hit. He needed to know that it was okay to have those really big feelings, that he didn't need to skip over that. He just needed to find the right outlet for him. It's not going to be breathing for every kid. Now, breathing is healthy. We all need to do it to survive and to live. And we also want to get to that point where if we're in a space where we don't have a punching bag to hit, that we can just do that counting and that breathing. But it might need to be, there might need to be something in the middle of that that helps the child get to the beanbag and that actually feel effective. So I don't know if I'm directly answering the question, but I guess what I'm stating is we really have to look at what is your child's needs in that moment? And are we trying to fit them into a mindfulness mold that looks like, pop psychology, where everyone needs to meditate in that moment, and that's how we self-soothe? There's so many different ways to self-soothe, and some of it is really getting that extra anxiety and aggression out in a healthy way, so they're not breaking things and they're not shutting down. So we have to really look at who is the kid, what makes them tick, and what actually, and having that communication with them. What do you think you need? It's a good question sometimes to ask. Well, what do you think you need in this moment? If that's too overwhelming for them, I don't know. Okay, let's talk about it. So having a conversation and letting them explore what they think they might need in that moment, rather than trying to figure it out for them.
I think that's great. And thinking about, I mean, that was an interesting picture, to think here's this really angry kid and jumping right to soothing in a beanbag when what he really needed was something in the middle. And think, in, again, kind of in a neutral time, exploring with our kids, when you feel that way, first of all, what is that all about? Is it because I have 50 things to do for school and I'll never get it done, or I never get to see my friends, or, I mean, understanding the root of that allows us to help them to start to solve the problem, or help us to help them solve the problem together. And then when I feel that way, I mean, I think it's huge when students start to recognize the feeling before they explode or do something inappropriate. So, we really need to validate that. Wow. When you recognize that, now what could you do to let that out? So that's, yeah. And I love the punching bag, and then sit down and chill.
Get it all out. Yeah. In a healthy way, and, manifesting it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then validating them for doing that. That is a really mature way to be when you can do that.
Absolutely. And I think that parents sometimes get scared of anger because anger can feel really unmanageable. But the truth is, if it's dealt with in a healthy way, it can actually be a really productive feeling if we
Absolutely.
it in the right way. So not being afraid of the anger, but trying to help them figure out what is beneath that, what is going on underneath that, those vulnerable, scary feelings that might feel better as anger. In the long run, they may need less of that aggressive outlet, and they might be able to go directly to that beanbag chair. But like you're saying, Jill, really helping them articulate what they're feeling is going to heighten their awareness and make them feel more in control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you to everyone that contributed and left comments and questions. It looks like we did put a link to the book that Aurora mentioned, Parenting from the Inside Out. So that's in the comment section if you want to go look that up. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. This is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell, here with our guests, Dr. Catherine Barrett, her associate Aurora Kaye, and Laura the director of the Irvine, California Stowell Learning Center. Dr. Barrett, do you have any last minute thoughts before we close out today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having Aurora and myself on today. We always, love being able to share with parents who are going through this. We know a lot of people need extra support. The last thing I will say is you are not in this alone. And I know every parent and every family is going through something, a variation of this, but knowing that there's help out there, there's support groups out there, like Aurora and I were talking about. And I think it's great what Stowell is doing for these families, because we all need that extra support and that extra help right now. So Jill, I told this to you when we had our initial conversation before this, what you all do as an organization for families and for teens and for kids is just remarkable. And I have yet to find another organization that does it as well as you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I loved having you on the show today. If people wanted to get in contact with you or Aurora to work with you, how would they do that?
Absolutely. So they can go to my website is CB, like my initials, cbpsychological.com. That is my phone number. If they want to get directly in contact with Aurora, we are still setting up all of her contacts, so they can contact me and I can direct them to her, or they can go to my website and send me a message and I can get them in contact with her. So the quickest way is to contact me first as we're setting all of her stuff up. And there's my contact information right there.
Perfect. And she will be joining you as of July?
We're going to be waiting on her. Aurora, what are you thinking? Your intern number will probably come in June, July, hopefully?
Yeah, hopefully June, July, I think, with our pandemic state, maybe July.
Yeah.
Well, good. That will be a great addition. We have been delighted to have Dr. Barrett as a resource, and I know she's really busy, and so that's going to be fantastic to have you joining her. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning disabilities, dyslexia, and attention challenges. We are live every Tuesday on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, my guest will be college admissions counselor Janice Royal. Even though we're in this stay-at-home situation right now, I know many of you parents with high school juniors and seniors are feeling a little panicked about what happens now and how do I find the best fit for college, especially if you have students with learning or attention challenges. So this is right up Janice's alley, and she will be here with some really critical information for you as you move into that college stage. So be sure and join us next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Stowell Learning Centers are open. We are doing remote screenings, amazing remote sessions. We are adding new students from around the world remotely. So if you have a child or a teen, even an adult in your family who is struggling with learning or attention challenges, this is a great time to make real and permanent changes. Life has in some ways slowed down a bit because we're not running everywhere. And this is a great time to deal with these things right now. So if you would like to speak with someone about your child, give us a call at 877-774-0444 or visit us online at stowellcenter.com. Thank you again, Dr. Barrett, and don't forget to tune in next Tuesday at 10 a.m.